We are nearing the crescendo of all that we've been building here. We just have a little bit further to go, and it's going to get real exciting really fast. I hope you're uh, building your anticipation the way I am, or I'm trying to. We're now going to look at the single firms market in the short term. Here we go. Since we're putting costs and revenue together on the same model, we can just use a dollar sign to label the vertical axis because everything is going to be in dollars, and what each thing is going to be will be labeled with that curve, which is a little different than we're used to doing, I know, in our algebra classes, right? Because you have x and y and you just have the one line. But here we have different lines representing different but related things, but all in the same unit measured up here. And these outcomes in dollars are all affected by quantity. And we're talking about a single firm, so I'm using a lowercase q down here. Now, the cost curves we've derived in the past, so I don't want to go through and re-derive those curves, probably maybe even less than you want to see me go through and plot ordered pairs to derive those curves again. So that's what I mean. If those aren't comfortable, if this is totally feeling really wacky right now, you probably want to go back and review the previous chapter. Average total cost is generally a parabola. And we've derived that to show why that is. Okay, that's just something we've done. If you missed it, go find it. It's in the past. It's available. It's crossed at its minimum by what? Marginal cost. Always at the minimum. And then average variable cost is something that looks sort of parallel to average total cost, but it isn't. In fact, it slowly approaches, asymptotically approaches average total cost as it goes off into space. That's average variable cost. Okay. And it's crossed at its minimum by marginal cost as well. So this is stuff that we've seen in the last chapter. Now, what we haven't done is to apply any kind of revenue curves to it, and we just explored those in the last video segment. The way econ courses are structured and the way these types of industries play out, we have the cost curves, and for each type of industry that we're discussing, we have different looking revenue curves. So far, we're only discussing perfect or pure competition. I'm using those interchangeably because they mean the same thing. And so we're going to do, they will look different for the other types of firms, okay? So let's go ahead and apply our relevant revenue curves. Really, there's just one with this, in this case, and it's the one we just derived in the last video. Let's say it's here for this first example. Now that is the price that this firm can get, and that comes from the market price. It is what it is to this firm, though. And that's also the firm's demand curve, because the sellers, these sellers, who they're selling to will buy, whether they have a little or a lot, they'll buy it. And so for that price, it doesn't matter if it's a little or a lot, it's that demand curve. That's what they face. And that's also their marginal revenue curve. If there's anything that's not clear here so far, we haven't done anything new. We just put them together. So if any of these components aren't clear, that means you're probably going to have difficulty following what comes next. So go back and find what you missed. Okay. I am repeating some things to try to reinforce them. So, there's a chance, but if it's feeling really foreign, you probably have skipped something somewhere. Now, the question is, how is this firm doing? You might be looking at this going, how am I supposed to know? It's just a bunch of lines and space. Well, to answer that question, I think what you need to ask yourself first is, what is this firm doing? Meaning, of everything we have here, what can they do? They can choose what quantity to produce. In the short term, how much should they make? Now, can we tell where they would do that. It was brought up in one of the prior videos with this chapter. Where does the profit maximizing firm produce? Marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Burn that into your memory. Write it on little note cards. Paste it to your steering wheel. Put it beside your computer on a post-it note beside your computer. Hang it up beside your toilet. Hang it over your bed. Marginal revenue equals marginal cost. You're not going to want to forget that. That's where the profit maximizing firm will produce. And as I said, we're going to be looking at different revenue curves for different types of firms for the next couple chapters. This is true for all of them. Is that something you want to forget? Not if you want to do well. Remember that. The profit maximizing firm, and thus where we expect firms to produce, is where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. So that means this right here is the profit maximizing level of output. So let me ask the question again. How's this firm doing? How can we tell? Now we know what they're doing. How can we tell how they're doing? Well, we're interested in profit, right? Everyone's interested in profit. What's profit? Total revenue minus total cost. So let's start to think about where the profit is. What is it? Can I figure that out with what's here? The answer is yes. It can be figured out with what's here. Let's break these into their parts. Total revenue. What's total revenue? It's still what it was before. It's price times quantity. Whoops, even if I can't get a Q, it's price times quantity. And I have those things. Price times quantity. You know what? That's a rectangle. That's like base and height, or length and width, whichever you prefer. So look at that. This rectangle is total revenue. Base times height. That's an area of a rectangle. That tells me how they're doing on the top line. That line, total revenue. What about the bottom line? Or not the bottom line, but what about the difference? What about these costs? Can I tell that? Well, remember my lay definition of average total cost? That's cost per unit. What is cost per unit times the number of units? That's total cost. So I can get total cost. Or before I do that on the board, let's go ahead and think about it more formally than in lay terms. Average total cost. I'm going to switch to a different color because this is kind of an aside. Average total cost was equal to total cost over quantity. Right? This is what's the thing is. So it's what's up top, quantity's on the bottom. So if I'm interested in total cost, my cost per unit or my average total cost, what happens when I multiply by my quantity? This is like having a 1 there. This cancels out, and I'm left with, this shouldn't be here mathematically. I'm left with total cost. So my average total cost times my quantity is equal to total cost. But that's because of what I said in lay terms. Average total cost is cost per unit. Your cost per unit times your number of units is your total cost. So you can go in a circle here using the symbols and just the sort of the definition of terms in lay terms, and you arrive back where you started in your circle. So let me get that off there. Now hopefully that's laid out fairly clearly. And you know what? I will go ahead and go with that green since we've been using green here for costs. And let's see, how's this firm doing? Well, I got the total revenue. We just explored what total costs were. That's your average total cost times the quantity. And average total cost at that quantity is right here. Here it is on the number scale. That's average total cost at the profit maximizing level of output. So if this is the price per or cost per unit, and this is the number of units, then this rectangle must mean this is total costs. So if this rectangle on the outside is total revenue, and this rectangle on the inside is total costs, how's the firm doing? Which one's bigger? Revenue's bigger than the cost. This is a positive number. Can we see where that profit is in this model? Of course we can. Whole rectangle right in here. I'm going to get this out of here just not to mess up just to keep my markers from getting messed up. That right there is, I know that's not going to show up, economic profit. And it's an economic profit because, remember, our total costs included opportunity costs, right? So it's not just an accounting profit, it's an economic profit. This proprietor is making above what he or she could be making doing his or her next best thing. But there's gonna be a problem with that because this is easy entrance and easy exit. I like to call what's going to happen next the crab effect. Because I've seen it out crabbing. When you catch crabs and you put them in a bucket or in a bushel basket, as the bushel basket starts to get full, which is a good day, the level of the crab starts to near the top. And some of the crabs will have a sense of this, and they'll start to climb out of the basket. They're going to escape. But usually you don't even have to do anything about that because you know what? Crabs are just mean. And the other crabs see that and they say, oh no. There's a free rider problem with crabs is what it is. They say, oh no, you're not doing that. And they latch on. Say, you take me with you or you don't go. And that's what usually happens is they don't go because the other crab is holding them down. They're not letting them ascend to freedom. Here's a person making an economic profit above what he or she could otherwise be making, given his or her next best alternative. But it's easy in, easy out. Getting a CDL to drive a truck, as I said, it's not that hard to do. People in the same social circles as this person see that economic profit, and they come from the same background. They have the same resources, and they say, look at the money they're making. And they go and do the same thing. Now, an individual producer cannot affect the price. They're price takers. But what happens when a lot of people become sellers of this good in the market as a whole? Well, over here, I'm going to fit in my supply and demand framework for this whole market. And I know it's a whole market because it has a capital Q. Here's the price. Here was the equilibrium price in the whole market when this firm is doing well, making this economic profit. This is the supply for the whole market. This is the demand for the whole market. I missed. This is the demand for the whole market. They're making an economic profit. By the way, this is the total amount supplied to the whole market. That's a totally different scale, of course. They're making an economic profit, and it's easy in, easy out, and their friends see them doing well. Their friends want to do well too. Other people are going to enter this market to chase that economic profit. Determinants of supply and demand, number of sellers. Because of that economic profit, the number of sellers is going to increase. That's an increase in supply. Yes, this is an increase in supply. Remember the old Jedi mind trick, don't fall for it. It's still true. That is an increase in supply. And look what we can expect that to do to the equilibrium price. Push it down. The way I've drawn it here, that eats into this profit. Guess where we expect it to go? Away. We expect that profit to fall away. I'm going to stop this because I'm out of space. I'm going to look at this firm a little differently. I don't want to reveal how, but we're going to look at it a little differently. And then we'll probably yet another video after that where we'll really tie things together. We are just building and building here, aren't we?